Hello everybody, so a while ago I was going to make a video on the subject of AV, or Alternative Vote, which is a voting system. Here in the United Kingdom on the 5th of May there is going to be a referendum. The public of the United Kingdom is going to be voting on whether to keep the old first past the post system of voting or switch to the Alternative Vote system of voting, or AV. And I was going to make a video about this a while ago when I wasn't really sure which way I was going to vote. And then Dylan and Cole said he was going to make a video about it, so I thought, fuck it, I'll just listen to Dylan and Cole's video on it and vote whichever way he tells me, because I don't have a conscious mind that I use to make my own decisions. I just, do whatever Landon tells me because he is Landon. And yeah, that's basically how my mind works. Just do whatever Landon says. Also, some people who will remain nameless would have you believe. But Dylan and Cole never made the video he said he was going to make. He said he was going to make a video about AV on the 22nd of April. It is now the 29th. Whatever, I'm sure he's got a good excuse. I'm sure he's very busy. I know he's a pretty busy guy. He's a busy bee. A busy trench coat wearing beardy bee who likes trains and reads books about Dungeons and Dragons and carpet bombs brown people. But whatever, for whatever reason, Landon has not made his video on AV, and so I feel that the obligation has been passed on to me, and as such, I'll be making a video about AV. Although I should mention that since I first had the idea to make a video on AV, my opinions have become slightly more biased. And by slightly more biased, I mean a lot more biased. I think I've made up my decision on which way I'm going to vote, as you will soon see. But before I get to all that, I think I should actually explain what AV, Alternative Vote, actually is. Well, I'm not going to explain it. I'm actually just going to read off of a website called Conversational UK, which explains it quite well, I think. Albeit in a somewhat, what's the word? Patronising manner? Okay, so this is the explanation of what AV is on Conversational UK under the heading, What is AV? Alternative Voting Explained. Since 1951, our voting system has been single vote and non-transferable. This means that the first past the post wins. I'll explain how it works. Imagine a country called Glenend, gotcha, are having an election. There are 4 candidates in this election: Jim, Diane, Bob, and Danielle. It's a rather informal election. Vote Jim for Greater British Presence in the Middle East. Anyway, there are 4 candidates in this election: Jim, Diane, Bob, and Danielle. On polling day, people vote by putting an X on the ballot paper next to the person they want to win. Votes are cast as follows: Jim 33%, Diane 31%, Bob 20%, and Danielle 16%. Jim wins because he was first past the post. Your vote only counts for the person you put an X next to on your ballot paper. However, and this was the thing that made me think, even though 67% of the people who voted in Glenend didn't vote for Jim, as nice as he is, Jim still wins. The inhabitants of Glenend begin to think that there might be a fairer way of voting, and so they ask people to vote again. This time, they asked people to vote differently, using AV. Instead of putting an X next to the person they wanted, they had to score them 1, 2, 3, or 4 in order of preference. When using AV, it's about getting 50% of the votes. If Jim got 50% of the votes, he would still win. However, as Jim didn't get 50% of the votes, this is where it gets complicated. Danielle, who came last, got 16% of the votes, and so she is out. However, her supporters' second preferences are then shared out among the rest of the candidates. At this point, Jim still doesn't have a majority, and so Bob, who was in 3rd place, is out. And all his voters' preferences are shared out between the 2 remaining candidates, Jim and Diane. Because more people's second choices were for Diane, and Jim didn't have a majority, Diane wins the election. As you can see, AV hopes to better represent the preferences of the majority of people by considering people's preferences for all of the candidates, rather than forcing them to choose a single one. If you still don't understand AV by now, there is a lovely little video that you can go and check out that I will link to in the description. It explains everything in under 5 minutes, and afterwards, if you want to laugh, you can click on one of the suggested videos, which is the same video, but in Welsh. No offence to Welsh people out there. I love you people, I love your language. I love that it sounds like your tongue is like an inch too long. I'm kidding, Wales, don't be offended, seriously. I mean, where would Wales be without its ability to take being mercilessly mocked by the English? I'll tell you where you'd be. Scotland. And nobody wants to be Scottish. And if they say they do, they're fucking lying. Fuck Scotland! Okay, so now you know what AV is. The main reason behind why we are having this referendum is because under the current system of first past the post, 2 out of 3 of our MPs are being elected without a majority. That means that in 2 out of 3 cases, when an MP is elected in this country, most people didn't want them to be elected. AV is an alternative to that, wherein its main focus is getting a person elected with at least 50% of the vote. So I'm going to go through some of the arguments for and against AV. With the help of these. These are pro and anti-AV leaflets that I was sent to my house. And to be quite honest, I think that both of them are pretty terrible. Let's look first at the one I dislike the least. This is the yes to fairer votes. It is the pro alternative vote leaflet. Worried about your job? Your MP isn't. Make your MP work harder. Vote yes on May 5th. On May 5th, show your MP who's boss. Vote yes. Most of us worry about our jobs. The system we use to elect our politicians means that MPs don't have to. Are you happy with business as usual? Expenses, scandal and all? The only way you can make your MP work harder is by voting yes in the referendum on the alternative vote. Wait, so your main selling point for AV is that it's apparently going to make our MPs work harder? Alright, well maybe it will make them work a little bit harder, but you really think it's going to massively change the habits of members of parliament in this country? And do you really think it's going to change behaviours that led to things like the expenses scandal? Really? No, I don't think alternative vote is going to massively change the working habits of our members of parliament. And I think, personally, that they should have led with the entire thrust of why we're voting on this in the first place. Because we believe that alternative vote is a fairer system of voting. Why did they not lead with that? I really don't understand. I mean, the only part of the leaflet which actually has the phrase yes to fairer votes is in the logo. It's in the logo, why don't you actually elucidate on that? Instead of just saying that it's going to make your MP work harder, which I don't really think it's going to do. At least not massively. Now to be fair, this is the only piece of yes to fairer votes pro alternative vote literature that I've seen. Maybe on other leaflets that they're handing out, they are leading with the whole it's a fairer system thing. But that is kind of weak, I think. Okay, let's move on to the hilarious no on AV leaflet. AV would lead to more hung parliaments, backroom deals, and broken promises. On Thursday, May 5th, vote no to AV. Now let me read you the back. Vote no on the alternative vote on Thursday because it will produce more coalitions. Under the alternative vote system, we would have coalitions most of the time, with Nick Clegg deciding who would be Prime Minister by cutting a deal behind closed doors after the election. Why? Why would we have more coalitions? Why would we have coalitions most of the time just because we change how people are elected? Please explain that point a bit better, because you've just said it's going to produce more coalitions, it's going to produce more hung parliaments, without actually explaining why. Vote no on the alternative vote on Thursday because it is used by only 3 other countries in the world: Fiji, Australia and Papua New Guinea, and Australia want to get rid of it. Most people don't use the alternative vote, so it must be bad? Just because a small number of countries use AV doesn't mean we should just give in to peer pressure. Didn't anyone from No to AV go through the DARE program? Drugs, abuse, resistance, education? See, I learned about that. I remember not to give in to peer pressure, although I have made the decision on my own to try drugs, but oh well, DARE helped. Also, it's not like AV is an uncommon system of voting. It is used in other areas, you know. It's used in various organisations, it's used in unions, it's used in the House of Lords, I think. I think, if I'm correct, that the political parties use it to elect their leaders, like, within the party. So it's not like it's a system that isn't in use. It is in use. Bad form, no to AV. Bad form. Vote no on the alternative vote on Thursday because it allows the 2nd or 3rd placed candidate to win. We would end up with 3rd best candidates becoming MPs. What? No, that's completely different. You're looking at AV through the eyes of first past the post. The point is that if you haven't got a majority in the first round, which is where you would win in first past the post, the voting continues until we do have a first placed candidate. That's just purely promoting a misunderstanding of what AV actually is. Terrible, awful, bad no to AV. You suck. Vote no on the alternative vote on Thursday because it will cost the country £250 million at a time when money is tight. Where did you get that figure? Where did you just make that up? Where did you get that figure from? £250 million, that's how much it's going to cost. And we're basing that on various studies. Alright, we pulled it out of our arses. Vote no to the alternative vote on Thursday because it means that someone else's 5th preference is worth the same as your first preference. No, No, again, that is patently untrue, because someone's fifth preference is only considered if we get to the fifth round of elimination. How on earth is that equal? Vote no to the alternative vote on Thursday because it will mean that supporters of the BNP and other fringe parties would decide who wins, because they will be eliminated first and then their votes will be counted again and again for other parties. That will encourage other candidates to pander to the likes of the BNP. Well, first of all, if they're being eliminated first, that means that they have the least amount of votes. In other words, they have the least amount of political sway. And it's not going to be the BNP that they're going to be voting for, because their first preference would be for the BNP and they got eliminated. So in that sense, the people who voted for the BNP are not deciding who wins, because at that point they haven't voted for the BNP. We're looking at their second preference and we're looking at who they voted for after that. And the idea that it'll encourage other candidates to pander to the likes of the BNP isn't really the whole story. The way that the AV system of voting is structured is designed to reflect the overall preferences of the majority. And yes, that means it favours parties who are more moderate and centrist. And so it is harder for extremist parties like the BNP to get in, which is why the BNP are telling people to vote no on AV. Yes, it will mean that the candidates are going to have to try and appeal to the majority of people. The majority, most people, overall. It works in all directions. It doesn't just focus in the direction of the BNP. So again, that's just a misrepresentation of what AV actually is. And that's the last point on the leaflet, and this is a disgusting pack of lies. I'm sure at this point that you probably have figured out which way I'm going to vote on May the 5th. As of this moment, I think I'm probably going to vote yes in support of alternative vote. I think it's a fair system that emphasises that people have to win by a majority, which is what this failed to point out. It allows people to be more nuanced with their political wants and needs because they aren't being forced to vote for one single candidate. And I think a lot of what is being said about AV from the no to AV camp is bogus a lot of the time. It's just propaganda. A lot of it seems to have just been made up, just outright lying, or sometimes deliberate misunderstanding of the system, a deliberate misrepresentation of what AV actually is to try and get people to vote against it. So yes, I'm going to be very biased and tell all my viewers in the United Kingdom to vote yes on May the 5th in favour of the alternative votes. It's a fairer system, I believe, and it'll make you more attractive to the opposite sex as well. Or the same sex. Whatever. Goodbye, everyone.